left to my own devices, I think my reaction to books and series is the more I like the first book, the less likely I am to finish the series, and I have no idea why I do that. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. If you saw my 2021 reading goals video, which I will link up here if you haven't seen it and want to check that out, one of the things I want to work on this year is reading more sequels. I have a really bad habit of reading the first book in a series, loving it. I think it's amazing, it's a great book, I definitely want to read the sequel. And then I just don't. One of my goals for this year is to fix that. I want to read more sequels. I want to actually get to these books that I'm really excited about. In thinking about that and in saying all that, it made me realize that I don't actually know what series I want to prioritize. So what I've done is I went through on the Storygraph and I noted every book I have read in the last, I think, 5 years that's in a series that I have not finished the series. So I made a list of all of the books or series, and then I went through and I categorized them as either want to finish, what we're talking about today, don't want to finish for sure, can forget about it, not even gonna think about it, and like series purgatory for all the books where I might want to finish the series someday, but right now it's not a priority. I think there was close to 30 books on my list of series I'm currently in the middle of, and that's just not reasonable to prioritize. Even if half of my reading this year was continuing series, I'd barely make any progress in that. So I decided I was going to narrow things down a bit, choose a shorter list of ones that I actually really want to read really soon, and let that be a bit of a guide for me. And because I find this sort of thing interesting when other people talk about it, I decided I was going to talk about it too. So that's what we're going to do today. This is the first in a series of videos about series. This is going to get seriously annoying of me saying series all the time, but we're gonna work with it. I have these loosely categorized, and the first set that I want to talk about are the various fiction series that I'm reading. And first among that set, in no particular order, these aren't ordered in terms of priorities or anything, it's just the order that I saw them / put them on my list. So the first among equals is the Penric and Desdemona series by Lois McMaster Bujould. This is the series that follows from Penric's Demon, which is a novella I read in August. I will link my wrap up if you want to hear my thoughts about that. I think I've talked about this series of novellas a fair bit on here already, so I'll try not to ramble too much. But we follow Penric, who is a young man from a minor noble family, who is suddenly and unexpectedly possessed by a demon one day while on his way to his own wedding. And this totally throws his life off track, it totally changes the direction he's going. He has to learn to live with this and maybe even see the benefits. It's a great series. I've read 2 out of the 9 so far, and I definitely want to read more really soon. With this one, it's partially that I just have so many books I want to read, so I'm not getting to it, and also a fair bit, I don't want to read them all at once because I like them a lot, so I want to keep having more to read. So I feel like I'll probably read one every couple months throughout the year and get most of the way towards the end of the series. Next up, I have some fantasy of a totally different type, and that is the Dr. Greta Helsing series by Vivian Shaw. This is sort of an urban fantasy which follows Dr. Greta Helsing, who is a doctor to the undead. So she works like a regular doctor, but instead of human living patients, she treats vampires and mummies and werewolves and all sorts of things like that. In the first book, she's living a relatively quiet and uneventful life until the undead start showing up ritualistically murdered, and she has to sort of save her community. There's only 3 books in this series, and the first one was incredible, so I'm really hoping to read the next 2 very soon. I think they follow a similar structure, but I don't think it's a continuous plot, so they should be just as fun, and I'm really excited about that. These series are unsurprisingly ones that I feel like I've mentioned a fair bit because they're the ones I'm excited to continue. And next up is Rotherweird by Andrew Caldecott. This is set in the strange town of Rotherweird, which has been almost entirely detached from the rest of England since the Elizabethan era, for reasons that no one is allowed to know. In the first book, we see the classic beginning of a story where a stranger, or in this case, 2 strangers, arrive in town, one of them incredibly wealthy and mysterious, and the other the new teacher of modern history. Of course, intrigue and mystery follows when the history teacher starts to question what exactly is going on in this town, why can no one know about history here, and more importantly, what happened to his predecessor and will it happen to him? Because the previous history teacher has disappeared under mysterious circumstances. From what I read on the blurb of the second book, I think the first book had that sort of structure where you think everything's resolved and then it turns out nothing is resolved at all and there was a much bigger fish coming along behind. So I'm so keen to figure out how that plays out in the second and third books. I should mention, for a lot of these, I have no idea if more books are going to be published. I'm speaking to the ones that are currently released or have publication dates assigned. I don't know if more will come out in this series or if it's a trilogy. We'll find out, I guess. Switching genres slightly, I would really like to finish the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. This series is a classic of science fiction about a small community of scientists and engineers and stuff like that in a very remote part of the galaxy. They were sent there as a galactic empire was sort of imploding in on itself in order to preserve all of humanity's knowledge so that a new civilization could be built up faster, as opposed to if a new civilization had to start completely from scratch and rediscover everything that had already been discovered. These books are really unusual in how they're written, at least compared to modern novels. They're almost more like short story collections that look in at the Foundation at various points in time, and not like 5-year points of time, sometimes like 100-year points of time, I think. Anyways, I read the first 2 out of 3 from the original series that Asimov wrote in the 1950s, and I would definitely for sure like to read the third in that series. I want to know how that resolves. And then Asimov also wrote, I think, 4 other books in the series at least that are variously prequels and sequels to the core trilogy, and I might try and read those at some point. I don't know. Heading back to some fantasy, I'd really like to finish the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Cogman. I've read 1 out of the 7 books in this, and it's been a while, but from what I remember, there's sort of a mysterious library organization that exists at the intersection of like multiple alternate universes, I think. I'm not totally sure how it works because it's been so long, but it sounds amazing. I remember quite liking the first book, and the main reason it made it onto the definitely yes, I want to finish this series list is because Katie at Katie Reads and Rants loves this series. She talks about how great it is all the time, and she's just got me so excited about it. So I'm really hoping that I will read the second book, maybe after doing a bit of like a SparkNotes refresher on the first one, and fall back in love and have a whole bunch of great books in the series to enjoy. Another series that I started a really long time ago but that I would like to get back to is the Mick Oberon series by Ari Marmell. This is set in the 1930s in Chicago, and it is a classic private investigator detective novel meets fantasy. Mick is just like any other down-on-his-luck detective that you would expect from that genre, except he's also a fae, and of course he's also on the outs with the fae royal court thing. And a series of mysterious and magical crimes/events start coming across his life, and he has to figure out what's going on. I've read 2 out of the 4 books, so this one should be a really quick one to finish off because they're pretty fast-paced, gripping novels, so I don't think they'll be slow to get through, and I want to know more. I love this style of book, especially when it's well written. I'm hoping that I'll enjoy these just as much now as I did, I think, 5 years ago. And the final fiction series, we're coming to something that I started super recently, and that is the Winternight Trilogy by Katherine Arden. If you saw my December wrap-up, which I will link up here, you will know that I absolutely adored The Bear and the Nightingale. It was incredible. I had so many great things to say about it, and many people whose opinions I respect so much have told me great things about the rest of the series and said that the rest of it's just as good and that they love it so much. So I want to make sure that I don't let this series become like some of the others on the list, where I read the first book, loved it, and then didn't finish. I want to actually get to the rest while my excitement is strong and while I'm super keen to read them. I also have several series of sort of comics or graphic novels that I want to continue reading. The first of which is Saga by Brian Vaughn and Fiona Staple. Does this one need no introduction? I don't know. I'm going to introduce it anyways. This is the story of 2 soldiers from opposite sides of an intergalactic space war who meet, fall in love, run away together, have a baby, and try and avoid getting killed by both of their sides, because no one wants it to get out that actually we're not so different. This was so big on BookTube around the time it started coming out back in like I think 2012 through 2014. That's why I started picking it up. I really liked the first few volumes, so I kept buying it, except I've actually only read 4 out of the 9 volumes, because for the last 3 years, about every 6 months, I went into a bookshop and thought, oh, I love Saga, I'm gonna pick up the next one. So I bought volume 5 and I brought it home, and then I never got to it. And then I forgot that I'd never gotten to it. 6 months later, I'm back in a bookshop and I go, oh, I should buy the next volume of Saga. I really want to continue reading that. And got volume 6. Until somehow I had 5 unread volumes. But I am confident that when I read this, I am going to love it. I want to know how it wraps up for now. I think there's no plans for any more beyond volume 9 at this point. So I want to know where it goes, I want to know what happens, and I'm really excited to dive back into that world. On a similar note of a booktube darling that I love but that I have not touched since 2015, I would also really like to finish Lumberjanes by Noelle Stevenson and then later volumes by Shannon Waters. This is set basically at Girl Guide camp, but way cooler, with mysteries and monsters and magic and amazing friendship and great characters. I actually read the first 2 volumes of this basically when they came out as collected editions. I didn't buy the individual comics, but like as soon as the bind-ups were out, I bought them, I loved them, and then I just never got around to picking up more. So right now I've read 2 of the collected volumes out of 16, and I own 2 more. So my plan is I'm gonna read the 2 that I have and see how I feel, because I want to love them, and I think I'm going to love them. But I want to read those 2 before I make the decision to invest in the further, I guess, 12 volumes that I would need to buy. Let's not put my wallet through that unnecessarily. And the final graphic novel series I want to finish is the Hobtown Mystery Stories by Kris Bertin. I read the first in this, The Case of the Missing Men, in October. I will link either a wrap-up or a vlog or something up here. It was delightful. The art in this is so cool. It looks like classic Nancy Drew art, except these are like serious mysteries, sort of. People get killed, there's mind control and body snatching, and it's kind of occult and weird. Anyways, I thought the first one was so great. There's been 1 other published. I want to pick that up, and I think probably keep following the series as he releases more, because like I said, I just found it so delightful to read and such a good thing to have on the shelf for when you just want a graphic novel mystery, which is something I didn't know I needed until I read that book, and now I definitely need more of. I also have 1 nonfiction series I would like to finish, and that is the series of Maya Angelou's autobiographies by, of course, Maya Angelou. I read the first 2 in 2020 and fell so incredibly in love with her writing that I want to make sure I pick up more. Again, it's been like 6 months now since I've read one, and I've actually put one on my February TBR because I want to make sure that I don't let it fall by the wayside. I can totally see myself thinking, I must get to that for like 5 years, and then going, why haven't I read these? They're amazing, I love them. I should read books that I know I am going to love. That brings us to the end of the list. I have 11 series that I want to prioritize reading soon, and hopefully I'll make a fair bit of progress into some of these this year. I don't expect that I'll finish all of them in 2021 by any means, especially where some of them have like 7 books, but I do hope to read at least 1 or 2 more books in a lot of these series this year and keep that passion alive and keep that excitement alive so that I don't forget them for so long again. Let me know down below, are you guys binge readers when it comes to series? Do you read the whole way through back to back? Or are you like me? Do you put them off? Do you forget about them for 5 years and then have to read a summary before reading the sequel? Either way, if you liked this video, please give it a like down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.